Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Cammie.
All right, I believe we're live.
Okay, here we go. Come on. Here you go.
All right. All right, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Hey, Joe and others.
Morning, everyone.
Well, it's the third Sunday of Advent, which is Gaudete Sunday, which is the Sunday of joy. We will light the pink candle, and Kate would correct me if I was wrong on that. Although there is discrepancy on whether or not the pink candle is third or fourth week, different traditions. So, but typically it is the third week, Gaudete Sunday, which is this again, like I said, joyful Sunday. And this Sunday we celebrate the shepherd story. And our storying will be in the commands. And so I'll share how those matter for us in our faith today. But this morning we'll start off with a song by Jim and Kathy that they've pre-recorded for us. And I'll start from the beginning because that's a nice place to start. Thanks, Jim and Kathy. Just a reminder, if you want to get your crayons or markers to doodle and draw during the storying or throughout the rest of the service, feel free to do that. Also, we invite you to take pictures of whatever doodling you do or whatever's around you in your worship space as you're doing that this morning. We've not had many, so it'd be nice to get a few to spread and share out in the weekly email. And then just invite you to turn your attention to Megan as she shares the storying this morning.
Good morning. I'm going to make no promises on the extra noise from my house because I have 3 dogs and a husband and a kid up. So we'll see. So we'll start this morning. We've been doing this. We've been in this series storying for quite a while now. I feel like, I think we're on week 10, 11, somewhere in there. So we'll start this morning again with a video like normal, and then we'll go into the rest of it. So I'll let Patrick cue the video for us.
For the next 2 minutes, turn and share with someone next to you. If you could create one law to make society better, what would it be? Now, let your partner share. Are you ready? Shh, quiet please. We're about to start. Now let's take a look back at our story so far. The Bible is a sacred story, echoed to us from the ancients. An epic, revealing the great Creator's pursuit of wholeness for all of creation. May we find ourselves in this amazing story. Jacob, now called Israel, had 12 sons and a daughter. He gave his favorite, Joseph, a beautiful coat. But Joseph's brothers hated him and sold him into slavery. Even worse, Joseph's slave owner threw him in prison for something he didn't do. But God gave Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. When he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, he was made second in charge of Egypt. Later, famine struck the Promised Land. So Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt for food. Joseph told them, "God turned your evil into something good. I will take care of our family." So all of Israel's family moved to Egypt and enjoyed the blessings that God had given to Joseph.
Live streaming. Actually, I can put you on the computer.
But peace in Egypt didn't last. A few generations after moving to Egypt, the Israelites' numbers grew and grew. Egypt's king Pharaoh felt threatened by the Israelites and forced them into slavery. In their suffering, the people of Israel cried out to God, and God answered with incredible signs and wonders. God also sent a humble leader named Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. God split a wide sea, giving them a narrow escape path from Pharaoh's armies. The Israelites danced and sang in celebration, but their journey had just begun. The people of Israel were about to embark on a long trek through the desert in hope of returning to their promised land. Let's continue the story right now.
Okay, so we will have our symbol up. Patrick. Yep, there's our symbol. Our symbol this week is the commandments. It's the stone tablets that were sent down. Feel free to start drawing those now. You can draw those throughout the story time, just whenever. If you draw something nice, we'd love to see it shared. You can share it on here. You can send it through email. You can share it to Facebook, any way you want. So there are those. So now we go into, sorry about the noise, our time where we start comparing the Bible. The Bible is like. So we will have those images up. The Bible is like a huge mountain. Mountains are captivating. They stretch out across the horizon, inviting us to explore the landscapes before them. They provide an unmovable landmark, orienting us to where we have been and where we are going. Mountains compel us to look upwards and admire the sheer magnitude and grandeur. The Bible is like a huge mountain, inviting us to explore the summits and valleys of our spiritual ancestors. Navigating the craggy, vast story, the Bible can be challenging. So we're going to take a minute and just start quieting ourselves, getting ready for the storying time. About the story. Our next story is called Commands, as it depicts God's giving the people of Israel commandments. When we hear the word command or commandments, we might think of God to be like an army general barking out orders. But the original Hebrew word for commandment in the Bible is mitzvah, which means to point to a path. The commands are not about God exacting rules to control people, and more about God protecting and guarding the Israelites toward a better way of life. Scene 1, instructions for life. 2 months after leaving Egypt, the Israelites set up camp at the base of Mount Sinai. All of a sudden, a powerful storm rolled in, and dark clouds covered the mountain. The people of Israel trembled in fear. Lightning filled the sky, and the ground shook as God's voice was heard from a blazing fire on top of the mountain. God said, Like an eagle carrying you on her wings, I rescued you from slavery in Egypt. You are my treasures and my blessings to all of creation. You are to live differently and reflect my way of life. Then God gave these commands. Don't worship anything but me. Put me above anything else. Don't dishonor me or my name. Remember to set aside a day each week for rest and worship. Honor your parents. Don't murder, steal, or lie. Live pure lives. Be faithful to your spouse. Don't be jealous of what others have. Be satisfied with what I give you. As God spoke, the Israelites trembled with fear and backed away from the mountain. They cried to Moses, "Don't let God speak to us or we will die." Moses encouraged them, "Don't be afraid. Let your fear and amazement of God lead you to follow God's ways." So all the people agreed, "We will do everything that God commands." As the Israelites stood at a distance, Moses climbed up into the dark clouds. There on the mountaintop, God gave him stone tablets with the commands and laws on them, carved by God's own finger. These special instructions were given to help the Israelites remember the best ways to live with God and each other. Moses spent 40 days with God on the mountains. But when Moses came down, he found his brother Aaron and some of the Israelites were having a wild party, trying to worship God through a golden calf they'd made. The Israelites shouted, "We want to follow a God that we can see." Moses was so angry that he smashed the stone tablets on the ground. Then he ground their idol into gold powder, mixed it with water, and made them drink it. Confused and sad, Moses climbed back up the mountain and begged God to forgive the Israelites. God said to him, "I am full of compassion and love, and I am slow to get angry, but I don't overlook rebellion. If my people will just live out my commands, I will show my amazing power through them." Scene 2, Tabernacle. God gave Moses a new set of tablets with the commands and laws written on them. Then God said, "Build a special place for me to live with the people I love." So Moses gathered Israel's most skilled builders and craftsmen to build a sacred tent called a tabernacle in the center of their camp. Inside the tent, the Israelites placed the tablets with the commands on a special wooden chest called the Ark of the Covenant. At that time, the Israelites organized themselves into 12 groups called tribes, according to which of the 12 sons of Israel, Jacob was their direct ancestor. Moses' brother Aaron and his descendants were chosen to represent the people as priests. Priests were spiritual leaders who had a special job of bringing sacrifices to God. The priests were the only ones allowed inside the tabernacle. If anyone else tried to come near God's presence and enter the tent, they would die. When God's presence was inside the tabernacle, a cloud appeared above it. This cloud turned into fire at night. When the cloud moved, the Israelites packed up and followed it, as it guided them on a long journey back towards their promised land. We'll take a few seconds and let that sit in, and then Patrick will put up our questions for discussion on the screen. We have 6 questions. Feel free to unmute yourself to answer those as you would like. If you're on Facebook, you can comment in the comment section, and then we will share those in our weekly email. Or if something later hits you after we've done all of the questions, feel free to go back to the Facebook and answer the question there. So our first questions: what did you see or sense? What sticks out to you from the story?
So I guess I had never heard or maybe I always missed it or what, but I never knew that after he ground down the golden calf, he put it in water and made him drink it. That sounds pretty crazy. I mean, I know as a parent, there have been times when I thought, oh, that I probably lost it. I probably shouldn't have gone quite that far. And I'm thinking by the time he got done making them drink all the ground up gold, he was probably like, it might have been a little too far.
What stuck out to me from the story was even after people have been given a direct order, they just go straight and disobey it.
I think for me, the cloud over the tabernacle and the fact that it would move and they would move with it was, I don't know. I know I've heard that before. I guess I've never really thought about how interesting that would be to be like, oh, wait, guys, our cloud's moving. We got to go west, got to go east. And the fact that you trusted a cloud to decide where you should go next, I don't know. That was mine. All right, let's move on to the next set of questions. What does a story say about you? What does it say about humanity?
Well, what I think about the story, the the way they said it in this passage, the people said we need a God that we can see. I think that says a lot to our humanity's struggle for Missourians being show me, or us just needing absolute proof other than just words on a page that something's true. I think that speaks a lot to these times, just as 4,000, 5,000 years ago, where people need physical evidence rather than just having faith that God's out there providing for us, protecting us, leading us where we need to go, and giving us guidance. It always I didn't have I never made the connection that people made the golden calf just because it's something physical, it's something there in front of them that they could worship instead of just worshiping the creation that's around us. I thought that was a pretty striking point.
Yeah, I don't know if this is related, but it's not, but I just didn't know why there were 12 instead of 20 tribes or whatever. Was there a reason there was 12 versus some other number? Is there I don't know.
Yeah, it says they were named the 12 after the sons of Jacob. And as I was telling the story, as Megan was telling the story, I thought, were there some discussion of like, okay, how are we gonna organize, did they throw out other options? And then they finally came back to, well, let's just go back to the source of Jacob's son. That's 12. We all originated from there, and that kind of gives us a clean structure. And then they're like, well, what about Moses and Aaron? Because they don't really fit into that. And we're like, oh yeah, well, they get to be the priest. Yeah, that's great for them.
That's their job.
Yeah. I thought the same thing when they read the story of like, what led them back to that, in that delineation of structure and creating the system to which they were going to be known. It's a good question.
I thought about the lack of patience that we demonstrate. It talks about the 40 days on the mountain, and the fact that those below wanted action, it seemed like immediately. Similarly, in our lives, we have oftentimes lack of patience. And I couldn't help but being drawn back to the old Ten Commandments movie that we have all seen, 1956, I think Cecil B. DeMille's movie, where it's depicted like that. The crowd became restless and wanted something physical to see. But certainly we demonstrate lack of patience oftentimes in our daily lives, and of secular happenings in our lives, as well as certainly of those things that we deem to be holy and religious.
And I think the kind of the stone tablets too, it's just a sense of something sturdy versus like parchment, or maybe they didn't have parchment or goat skin or whatever I mean, it's pretty hard, and it would be difficult to, have stone tablets and carry them around in some way. So maybe there's a sense of permanence there than something that would be more fleeting, like parts of parchment or something else.
Okay, we'll move on to our last two questions. In what ways do you personally struggle to live within God's boundaries? Which characters in the story are you most like, and how?
Well, I have a pretty short temper. I'm pretty sure Moses didn't want to break the tablets on his first go, but when he went down and saw what was going on and threw the tablets on the ground, breaking them, that's something that I could relate to.
You think he had some regret after that? Like, oh, shoot. Or do you think he just kind of said, okay?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure he didn't have the step 2.1 after throw
Right.
tablets
That's
in his
right.
head.
He wasn't thinking about what happened after tablet throwing.
Right.
Megan, I don't know that this answers your questions, but I did appreciate knowing the history behind the words commandment, and knowing that it was originated from the meaning of to point in the right direction or to show the path. And I think, well, maybe it does answer the question, because I can be stubborn. I don't necessarily want somebody telling me what to do. But if someone says, oh, here's a direction you can go that might be helpful, I'm a whole lot more receptive to that than somebody saying, this is what you're going to do. So I liked hearing the history behind that, that it's more, well, I don't want to say it's a suggestion, but it's offered as I'm showing you this is the way to live a full life. Like, these are the things if you want a full life, these are the ways you should, in which you should live, not you're going to do these 10 things. And I appreciate knowing the history behind that.
Yeah, Cami, to go along with that, I think what I heard about that same time was the comment that that we are to be satisfied. And when you put those two together, it's kind of a new thing for me to think about. Be satisfied with the path that God has put forth for us. That's more, I find that kind of compelling, kind of interesting.
I think to go back to Candy, I think that what does it say about humanity? I mean, I think none of us want to be commanded to do something, right? Like, we all like to be gently guided, maybe, but to be like forcefully commanded. And that's how I've always looked at the commandments, is they were like army bark down, right? Like, these are, follow these, this is it. Like, when you think about them more though as a path, or as, then it just gives it a little different twist, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, to go with that, where my mind goes is I think we always want clarity. And, I don't know how many times in my life I thought, well, if God would just show me, right? If he would just lay it out there, show me what to do, make it easy. And I think the reality is from the story is, even when that happens, we still mess it up. We still don't follow God's will, even when he, does that. I think it's just, right, sort of our nature and the story of humanity and our brokenness that, I, like you said, I don't think we always want that, but even when we do, too often, even when it's clear what God wants us to do, we're stubborn and we're selfish and we don't do it.
Just wanted to add to the conversation about commandments. Godly play refers to them. Sorry, I think we've got an echo. Tim's muting it. There we go. Okay. Godly play refers to the commandments as the 10 best ways to live. And I hadn't heard that until I started teaching godly play. And I just thought, because again, growing up, there were the commandments, and just replaying that in my head when I hear the story that they're the 10 best ways to live. Kind of like Cami said, it's not, a commandment. It's more, and like Megan mentioned, a path. So thinking of them as the best ways to live, not just a commandment.
That's way better than what I could come up with in my head, which was the 10 suggestions, which really does work. I like godly play's wording better.
All right. I love these conversations. I love that we're digging in deeper and that we're having these dialogues. I think this is what makes this time so special and unique, and the fact that we can do that and we can share with each other. So again, if there's something you want to share later, if something that somebody else said speaks to you later in the week, later in the day, feel free to add those comments, keep the conversations going. With that, I think I'm turning it over to Susie's object lesson, I do believe. Thanks.
I think it's me, Megan.
Oh, just kidding. Hey, Cami, it's you.
I came across this this week. I thought I'd share it with you all. I'm going to read a portion of the Litany of Trust. I think it's intended to be a response, a read and response. So you'll pick up on it, I'm sure. The response, if you want to join in, is, Jesus, I trust in you. That you are continually holding me, sustaining me, and loving me. Jesus, I trust in you. That your love goes deeper than my sins and failings and transforms me. Jesus, I trust in you. That not knowing what tomorrow brings is an invitation to lean on you. Jesus, I trust in you. That you are with me in my suffering. Jesus, I trust in you. That my suffering, united to your own, will bear fruit in this life and the next. Jesus, I trust in you. that you will not leave me orphan, that you are present in your church. Jesus, I trust in you. That your plan is better than anything else. Jesus, I trust in you. That you always hear me and in your goodness always respond to me. Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me the grace to accept forgiveness and to forgive others. Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me all the strength I need for what is asked. Jesus, I trust in you. That my life is a gift. Jesus, I trust in you. That you will teach me to trust you. Jesus, I trust in you. That you are my Lord and my God. Jesus, I trust in you. That I am your beloved one. Jesus, I trust in you. Would you join me in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those.
Here's our object lesson and our Advent candle lighting story from Susie.
Good morning, everyone. This morning we're going to continue with our Advent lessons. We're on week 3, but let's do a quick review of the first 2 weeks. The first week, we were introduced to the prophets. Now, prophets are people who come so close to God, and God comes so close to them that they know what is most important. John the Baptist was the last prophet. In the gospel today, John asks Jesus whether he is the one they are all waiting for. Jesus says, "Blessed is everyone who believes in me." Do you see the hand of the prophet? This could be John pointing the way to Bethlehem. Second week, we learned about the Holy Family. Now, the Holy Family is on the way to Bethlehem, and we're going with them. This is the mother Mary, the father Joseph, and this is their donkey. Now, Mary was about to have a baby, and it is very hard to walk when you're about to have a baby. Sometimes she could not take another step. That's when she rode on the donkey. Well, it's also hard to ride on a donkey when you are about to have a baby. When she couldn't take another step, she got down and walked. So she rode and she walked. They must have been the last people up the road to Bethlehem that night. Now this Sunday, we're going to hear about the shepherds. And this is the card for the shepherds. On this third Sunday in Advent, we remember the shepherds who were standing in the fields around Bethlehem, keeping their sheep. The shepherds are trying to stay awake so the wolves could not come and get the sheep. Suddenly, there was so much light in the sky that it hurt their eyes. They were afraid. Their hearts were beating so loudly. When they could hear something besides their own hearts, they thought they heard singing in the sky. That also scared them, until they heard the words of the song. The angels were singing, "Don't be afraid." Now, angels often say that because it is scary to have a messenger of God come to you. The angels were singing words, something like this: "Don't be afraid. We bring you tidings of great joy, peace on earth and goodwill to everyone. A child is born. Go, hurry, run to Bethlehem to see the child who will change everything." Here is the candle of the prophets. Let's pretend that one lit, right? Here's the candle of the Holy Family. There we go. Keep trying to. Well, and here is the candle of the shepherds. Let's just enjoy the light for a moment. But look, there's something different about this candle, the candle of the shepherds. It's the color of roses. This is to remind us of the great joy the angels sang of to the shepherds. It also helps us to remember that even if it is very serious to get ready to come close to the mystery of Christmas, you can't be serious all of the time as you get ready. This is the Sunday when it is time for a little bit of celebration. Now, if we were together in person and you could actually see the candle smoke, you'll see that when we can change the light. We'll pretend this one was lit. Okay? As we change it, the light isn't really gone. It's just changed. And now it fills the room. It changed to show us and remind us that we can always draw near to them, to the Holy Family. Everyone, have a great week, and we will see you next week for week 4 of Advent.
This is now our time for communion, so you'll want to get your communion elements ready, whatever those may be for you. And just want to share a few thoughts. There's a lot of similarities between our storying from today of the people of God going through the wilderness, Moses going to the mountaintop to visit God in order to bring God close to the people, and the story of the shepherds and the announcement that they get of Christ being born, Emmanuel, God with us, God coming near in the presence of humanity. And so I just want to share a few just reflections and thoughts on that this morning as we continue into this Advent season and approach the Christmas season and the celebration that exists there. One thing I want to go to is Susie's storying of that she's been sharing with us. And some people think, I think it's weird sometimes to talk about how the light changes its presence when she extinguishes it, because it's not light, it's now smoke, which are two different things. When we go back to the wilderness story, we were told that they were guided through the wilderness by the fire of God, the Shekinah glory, during the evening or during the day, and then at night they were met with a cloud. Or sorry, they were led by a cloud and then followed by a fire. And in the same way, that is illustrated in that story of the Advent lighting and the presence of God that moves in and around the world around us. The other thing from today's storying, our image that we meditated on, that we focused on, it was a picture of what the top of Mount Sinai looked like. That was actually a photo of the top of Mount Sinai, if you want to go back and look at that in the email. And so I was intentional in selecting that because I want you to see all the rocky crags that would have had, the view that Moses would have had from the mountaintop, and kind of how majestic that is, and yet also very rocky, very unsettled terrain in that space. And if we go back and we think about the stories that we've been sharing, how did we get here? How did we get to this place in the Exodus story and the command story? We have to remember this is 2 months. The story started with, it's been 2 months since they left Egypt. And so 2 months and the reason they left Egypt was, as Moses said to the Pharaoh, was, let my people leave this land so that they can go and meet and worship their God. That was the call. And part of that was to get out of the oppression of the slavery they were in. But Moses told the Pharaoh, this is so that our people can go and meet God. And so they had left Egypt They'd been wandering in the wilderness. They certainly had been led by the smoke and by the fire, the presence of God in that space, but God hadn't come near. And this is where that story is in the commandments of their desiring for God to come near, for God to be with them in this space. And that's their cry. And yet they're incredibly terrified of who this God is. He's still very much kind of out there for them, where they're not sure they want to go up the mountain and see him because they think being in the presence of God will just destroy them. And so they ask Moses to go as that representative. And he says, I will. And he says, I'm going to be gone a week. And I'm going to go up and talk to God, and I'll be gone a week, and I'll be back. And it doesn't take long for them to get to this place of despair, and they coax Aaron into creating this image. Look, Moses is up there meeting God. We really want to meet God and be a part of that experience. And certainly we can see the clouds and the thunder stirring at the top of the mountains. Perhaps we can create some resemblance of God here so that we can have some sort of shared experience of what Moses is enduring or going through. And so they created these golden calves, which they would have seen in Egypt. They created some similarity of the faith from the place where they had been to recreate some connection with God in this space. And I'm not trying to justify it, but certainly to understand that we, if we're honest with ourselves, we see that. We want that. We experience that. We see somebody else that is really passionate or excited about their faith for whatever reason that may be, and we want to reproduce that in ourselves, as opposed to going back to the source and saying, kind of as Ross said, I'm gonna wait with you, God. And then God says, okay, here's how we're going to wait. And we're like, yeah, that's an option. But we could also do this, God. And God's like, okay, you're not really looking to spend time with me. You're looking to recreate your own religion, your own experience in that space. And so we know these same struggles, these ancient tales, the ancient stories, they still speak to the heart and the reality of what we desire. We desire for God to be near. We want to feel him. We want that assurance. We want that security. And yet when God comes close, those ways sometimes are difficult to our pride. It's great that the godly lessons call these the best ways to live, because part of the mitzvah, or the laws or the commands, is that they are tov, the Hebrew word for good. And it's what God calls the creation, that all these things are good, that this way of life works together. He calls humanity very good, very tov. That these things are excellent for the way that life works. And commandments, or commands as we understand in the English, it doesn't really work with our culture, because we understand them as laws. We understand them as rules, as this checklist to live by. And Jesus comes and he gives us the greatest commandments, to love God and to love others. And that these are called the way. The people of that followed Jesus in the first century are called the people of the way, because the commands are considered ways to live, good ways to live. And the commandments are that. They're 10 good ways to love God and to love others. Because if you actually love God, you follow the 10 commandments. If you love God, you don't make other gods before him. If you love God, you don't need him in a graven image, because you understand that he's beyond those things. In fact, a graven image, it kind of limits that. It stunts our understanding and our spirituality in God. If we love God, we don't abuse his name, just like we don't abuse the names of those that we love in our families. If we love God, we remember that life is not just about toil and work, but it's about finding rest and enjoying the blessings that God gives us in life. And then when we love others, we love them by honoring our parents, recognizing they're the source at which life has come. Even if our parents if we come from difficult families and difficult backgrounds, they still have given us a source of life. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily follow the way that they live, but we can honor them, that there is a respect that is due in that process. That we can't love others when we kill them. We can't love others when we commit adultery or steal, or when we bear false witness or lie to one another, or when we covet. That those stand in direct contrast to loving. And these were certainly beyond the standard of even the Israelites. These weren't original. These rules were found long before the Hebrew story was ever written in other cultures. In the Babylonian culture, in the Egyptian culture, these rules, these things existed. And so they weren't original in that space, but we certainly get a different take on them in the way they operate. And so I think as we come into this Advent season, as we think of just that struggle, right? We're 9 months into the pandemic. They were 2 months into the wilderness journey outside of Egypt. How are we waiting? How are we anticipating God? How are we being patient in that space and letting God guide us into the story that unfolds, as opposed to us trying to take up the reins and make the story go the way that we want it narrated, that works out towards our end and not necessarily the end that God wants? And what things need to die in that space or change? And are we willing to let that happen as we try to actually allow God to enter into that space? This is where the shepherds were met, that they'd been promised by the prophet Isaiah, Emmanuel will come. And that Amos and Micah and many others had talked about the way that this way from this Messiah, what it would look like in life, the way that he would live, the way that he would change the rules. And then that night, as they sat in the field and they had this celestial experience with the angels showing up with this anthem of joy, they were met with this reality of, we should go see this. We should leave where we are to go see where God is. And the story tells us in Luke 2 that as they went, they found Mary and Joseph just as the angels had directed them. And they rejoiced, they worshiped in that space. And then they left in a way to go out and share the joy that they couldn't contain. That this was happening, that this was reality, that this way of life was actually going to come into the presence of their life, and they were going to actually see what it looked like to live the way that God was wanting them to, because God was putting on flesh. And they didn't go out in a way to say, hey, you should live this way, or hey, you should do this thing. But they went out with this reality of, hey, this thing that we've been looking for is finally coming to reality. So today's church, we sit in that same waiting for Christ to return, for Christ to come back and call us into the fullness of the heaven and the earth that will be recreated. But it's not a sitting patiently on our hands, knowing that we're the in crowd and they're the out crowd. Instead, it's about making sure that we're nurturing a way of life that is tov, that is good, that recognizes that those ways aren't by commandments and checklists of things that we should be doing, but they're actually the intention of our heart, of our relationships, of the way that we treat one another. That's the ushering into the kingdom that will exist until Christ returns and comes again. And so to keep Christ in Christmas, it is to make sure that we're following those basic realities of taking care of the homeless, of feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, of making sure that our fellow neighbors, brothers, and sisters are looked after, are cared for in this space. Now that's the call not of the state, but it's the call of God's children to look out for one another, to make sure that we're doing our part in this role. So may that be something that stirs us, stirs our imagination and the way that we walk in life, both as we continue through the pandemic, but also as we look to getting back into some normal routines in life and reestablishing relations incarnate, in person, because that's going to be weird when it does come to that place. The disciples had that night where they sat around the table with Christ after sitting with him for 3 years, walking intimately, learning from him, laughing, crying, being terrified in the different spaces that Jesus shared with them in those 3 years of his life. And on that night, he opens that evening saying, I have waited so passionately to share this with you. And he walks them through a familiar celebration, a feast of the Day of Atonement, of breaking bread and sharing a meal that remembered exactly the exodus of the Israelites leaving Egypt. But here he says, I want to put a twist on this story. And the twist isn't that God needs to incite murder in order for his grace and forgiveness and atonement to be felt by his people. But I am offering my body, the life that I've given, as the way that's good for humanity, good for life, good for this earth, good with God. But my life has been that ministry and that example. And that my love, my covenant, my blood will be the ultimate atonement for this. So that no one else, no animal, no person needs to die again. That my wrath is the wrath of God is satisfied. And the invitation is for all to step into this goodness. And that every time you gather together as people who are of the way, people who are walking in this union, remember this. Remember that I've shown you the good way to live. And remember that no one has to die in order to come in place with God again. This is my body broken for you. This is the blood of my new covenant poured out for you. Take and eat in remembrance of me until the day that I come again. You may now partake of your elements. Just a few ministry opportunities of things that are coming up. Megan's been working on pulling together the blessing baskets for the Boys and Girls Club. Megan, did you deliver some already?
No, not yet.
Just getting them pulled together.
We're getting them pulled. Yeah, we did our first round of shopping Thursday. We're doing our second round on Tuesday, and then we will deliver them probably Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. So if you'd like to donate to that, again, providing some very basic needs that most of us don't even think about as a hardship in the pandemic. But through the relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, we realized those basic elements of toothpaste and socks and laundry detergent. Those are things that some families are just really struggling to have and to get by with. And so you can make financial donations so they can get that shopping done. And the blessing that's coming from. If you didn't get a chance to see the video from Abby in the email, I encourage you to go back and see that. Abby's the director over at Boys and Girls Club. Also, we're hosting Family Promise, those who are without homes during Christmas week. And so there's an opportunity to provide meals. We are partnering with Roots of Life to help us provide those meals. And so get on and sign and commit to those meals. If they fill up, you might reach out to Susie and see if there's anything else that we might be able to do to help bless those families to make sure that they have a rich and full Christmas celebration this year. And then also a new opportunity Cammie's organizing with us, and I think we're going to partner with Serve Noblesville as caroling. And so there's two ways that you can partner with this. The first is if you want to carol, we're inviting you to get a group of people that you feel safe with in your circle to get together and go out and carol. We're asking you to keep those relatively small, about a group of 10, but if it creeps to 12 or whatever, as long as you're safe in that circle, feel free to do that. But if you're not the caroling type, but you'd like to hear some caroling, you can help us by being a location that we know that we can send carolers to, and let your neighbors know that on, what night is it? The 20th, next Sunday at 6 o'clock, 6:30? 6? Next Sunday at 6 p.m., the carolers will be sent out to neighborhoods, and folks can come out to their front doors, front stoops, and listen to the carolers go past. We're not promising quality, only a presence there. So, but if we have a few folks who know that, I'm glad to have carolers here and glad to make sure that my neighbors know that, so that they can come out and be blessed by some pleasant holiday sounds, could be a way of just offering some encouragement in this space. I think those are the main ministry opportunities that we have. We'll be sharing a little bit more about the Christmas Eve digital service as that's getting finalized. That'll get probably sent out early that morning for you to enjoy it when you want to on Christmas Eve. Again, we'll continue with these virtual and digital services until something changes. So just plan on these, and we'll try to make sure we get the word out when we switch to come in person. I don't foresee that happening until the spring, if not later. So with that, after the benediction, I'll be turning off our Facebook Live. So that'll stop feeding. And then we'll continue with Time of Connecting for anybody who wants to tune in and say hey to anybody or just check in on life. With that, let me give you a benediction. May we head out into the week with the holy expectation of God meeting us where we are, and that we can be humble in spirit, to not force God into the golden calves that we tend to create in our world, but that we have the holy imagination to go where God calls us, with courage, with strength, and with one another. May God be with you as you go through your week. Go in peace.